that kind of protection is given, then everybody can become a session. How quickly their minds can be manipulated through social media. It is not that only Aadhaar has to be produced for elections. But then who will rule otherwise? No, I don't think so. We hold elections each time on time. In an autocracy, electoral autocracy, the rulers might decide to hold an election when they wish. But according to our constitution, we are holding it every 5 years, or whatever is stipulated if a government falls. And so therefore within time, on time, each time. And interestingly, it isn't a result which is 99% in favor of one party, as you may have seen in some other countries. Here, we are voting by secret ballot. We're voting on an electronic voting machine. The VVPAT is showing you what the result is, so people can discern that. In all these years, 75 years since independence, in every election, whether it's a state election or it's the general election, the loser has accepted his or her position, or the party has accepted without question. That means they've had faith in the electoral process. There are many countries which go on a kind of dharna for months. They don't accept it. But India hasn't been that. Therefore, whatever these calendars are that are listing what, or whatever, I wouldn't call it an autocracy at all. I'll answer the question in 3 parts. Soon after independence, there was only one party. In the afterglow of independence, there was only the Congress party. So the Congress party used to win the general elections and also win all the state elections, until in Kerala, when president's rule was imposed. Thereafter, we came to a situation of a multi-polity. So there was no longer only one. So at that time, it may have been possible to coordinate. Now, in today's polity, it is not possible to coordinate because, number one, it will require major electoral changes. Changes in the Constitution, changes in the Representation of the People Act. And then you have to visualize a situation where if all are to be coordinated and say a state government falls, then you will no longer have president's rule. You will put the country through elections all over again. I mean, that's very difficult to conceive. The idea, of course, behind this idea is that it's a loss of time, a great deal of expenditure, which is a fact. Elections are expensive. And then you have to, there's a model code of conduct, and that keeps development work hanging. So there are cogent reasons why we shouldn't constantly go into election mode. And I can understand it from a politician's point of view, that if that politician comes to power and wants to start developmental activities, then something will interrupt it. But as things stand, I put this to you, that on one occasion, Mr. Vajpayee's government fell in 13 days. Now, would we see another general election? So there is nothing in the Constitution that suggests that. And then that would put the country through even more trauma. There was a proposal by one of the commissions of inquiry, which was set up in the Lok Sabha, where it suggested that maybe elections could be held every 2.5 years. But still, if let us say a state government is put under president's rule, the maximum period is for 6 months. And if there's some calamity, then up to 12 months. But then how long, then who will rule otherwise? And you have president's rule for the states, but what do you have for the center? So there are difficulties. But you don't have to use only Aadhaar for voting. The Election Commission has already got over 800 million election cards. And even when we did elections, we said that if you don't have that, you can bring some other document. But we wanted to rely on the election card because it's a photo electoral card. So like, for example, it has your photograph. And the same photograph is also on the electoral roll. So presiding officer, when looking at a photograph on the roll and seeing your face, will know that this is not a case of an illicit or unauthorized voting. So we wanted to make sure that fraudulent voting was stopped. That's why the EPIC card, we call it, and I had raised it in my time to about 560 million, and then my successors took it forward to almost 900. I mean, I think 95 or 96% of the country was covered. So that still exists. The government doesn't say you don't bring your electoral card. But there shouldn't be a fear of the electoral process there. That's what I'm saying. If generally about the Aadhaar, if somebody has some fear, I can't say. But it is not that only Aadhaar has to be produced for elections. The electoral card is also there. Yes, there have been many demands, particularly from Kerala, because so many people from Kerala are working overseas, and they've been wanting to vote, and they wanted to vote electronically. But we have not developed safeguards where anyone can vote electronically from another country. And as you know, every vote counts. You can win and lose an election by one vote. So political parties are also very aware that each vote that is put into a button that is pressed is done fairly and authorizedly. Now, if the Election Commission can't guarantee pressing a button in, say, Abu Dhabi or Dubai for a voting in election in Kerala, then we can't take that forward because we don't have any firewalls to protect that at the moment. But we have developed the EVM, and I think, as I've argued in my book, it works very well. It's also tightly supervised by the bureaucracy of the country. It's not just volunteers and college students and all that. There is a whole structure of the Indian administrative and police that guard that. So I think that's fine. What I'm more afraid of is that, for example, in 2015, it's alleged that Russia manipulated the US election. Now, if countries can begin to encroach and manipulate the elections, say Cambridge Analytica and these other organizations get to know what your preferences are or what your deep dislikes are, and then through the social media, they play on that. For example, if you, on Google, you ask 4 or 5 times for, say, an event in World War II, suddenly you'll be flooded with World War II. Now, so you can be manipulated. Your thoughts can be manipulated, and that is what is the biggest danger now in global elections. We are a big country. Say there's a tiny country comparatively of 6 million or 11 million or 12 million. How quickly their minds can be manipulated. through social media, through Twitter, through Google, through Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg himself has had to face the US Congress and has been summoned before the UK Parliament, but it hasn't gone. But I'm not mentioning Mark Zuckerberg, it's just an example of how social media now can manipulate your mind. Suppose you have certain prejudices, say against a community, and keep pressing and pressing and pressing that apprehension or whatever you feel, then that is a manipulation, and that is dangerous. It can do this, that they can call in the heads of that social media. Say you're the head of particular well-known global social media organization, and call you into the Election Commission and say, look, in this country we have a model code of conduct. This is what it is. In this country we have the IPC. This is what it is. So if one of your things is going to breed hatred during election time, then I'm sorry, you're culpable under the Indian Penal Code, and you're also culpable under the Model Code of Conduct, and we will shut you down during the course of the elections. I would do it. You see, we have 3 weeks of an election process. I mean, it's not going on for months. So during that period of time, if somebody in the social media, we would have to call the head of that company and say, you cannot do this. You must abide. Otherwise, you're upsetting our model code of conduct. Can take. It has the power under Article 324 of the Constitution. If you read that, it has omnibus powers. Now, at that time, when the Constitution makers did all that, who could visualize social media? We couldn't really even visualize it 10 years ago. So now it's a new reality. And if the Election Commission, and when my book was released, to put it on record, Mr. Sunil Arora, then Chief Election Commissioner, was in the audience. And this question was asked. So I invited him up to the stage and said, you're the present CEC, please give an answer. And this is the answer that he gave. So I'm only quoting him. My thing is only this, that there should be transparency. If you can devise a system of bonds where you know who is putting in what, then it's okay. And this is the transparency we've suggested in our many electoral reforms. How do you get the money? How do you spend the money? How do the political parties spend the money, etc., etc. So electoral bonds, we don't know who is contributing what. You only have a final figure that this party's got this and this party's got that. But please remember, parties change. Now, in a state, there may be this party in power. In another state, it may be another party in power. It's not necessarily the party at the center. So, and all this will keep, parties will change, you know, parties win elections, lose elections, candidates win elections, lose elections, candidates go from one party to another. So this is not aimed at one party, this is aimed at transparency as a whole. So if some amendment could be made to the act and transparency brought in, then it's all right. But you see, there may be one ruling party at the center. There may be another ruling party in a state. So it's not always uniform. And every election, permutations and combinations take place. But from the point of electoral polity, we must aim at transparency. I'm really not interested whether he wins or you win. It doesn't matter. But to maintain a level playing field, then that information should be shared. Well, you know, like I was pressurized in the sense that I didn't agree with the chief on many things, and I would put it in writing. But But you know, one is apprehensive, and but I just I'm a very strong person, and I said it doesn't matter to me. What will happen, but these are my views, and if they don't coincide with the chief's, it's okay. Here's my opinion in writing, and I gave it in writing. But if the two also have the same powers against, the same protection against removal, then they would no doubt, I mean, I don't think I would have behaved any differently, but at least I wouldn't be on the wrong side of a majority. I mean, we all have, I think that's a very important reform, the most important reform in my view that is needed to be made by the government. Not only political pressure, any pressure. For example, Mr. Seshan, he was in open conflict with the Prime Minister of the day. And he said that impeach me if you can, I won't go. Now impeachment is not easy. You have to have 66% of Parliament present and voting. So he didn't care. That kind of protection is given, then everybody can become a Seshan. This I would like you to see on the website of the Election Commission. There are about 34 reforms, basically asking where candidates are getting their money from, how they are spending it, where are political parties getting their money from, how are they spending it. It's basically questions regarding political finance. And because if you don't have, again, it's an issue of transparency, no? That's why these bonds don't offer any transparency. You may have contributed 1 crore, but I don't know. I have a right to know.